Two summits, same week, completely different results. On one side of the world, Donald Trump landed in Beijing for a two-day state visit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. More than a dozen chief executives of major American technology and financial companies flew with him. The pomp was extraordinary. The welcome ceremony at the Great Hall of the People, the state banquet, the toasts. Trump called the talks extremely positive and productive. He said fantastic trade deals had been made. He invited Xi to the White House in September, and when reporters asked what specifically had been agreed, the answer was essentially nothing. No major announcements, no breakthroughs on trade, no commitments on Taiwan, no resolution on critical minerals or rare earth export controls. Two leaders being very gracious to each other and promising that conversations would continue. On the other side of the world, Mark Carney was in Calgary signing a pipeline agreement that has a July submission deadline, an October designation commitment, and a September 2027 construction start. 1 million barrels per day to Asian markets, 50,000 new careers, a carbon market framework both governments designed together. One summit produced promises, the other produced dates. And in geopolitics, dates are what actually matter.
We had extremely positive and productive conversations and meetings today with the Chinese delegation earlier. And this evening is another cherished opportunity to discuss among friends some of the things that we discussed today, all good for the United States and for China.
All good for the United States and for China. That is the entire substance of what Trump announced after 2 days of high-level talks in Beijing. Not a trade framework, not a critical minerals agreement, not a Taiwan understanding, not a resolution on the rare earth export controls that have been strangling American technology supply chains for months. Analysts covering the summit were explicit about what happened. China got exactly what it needed from the visit without giving anything concrete in return. Xi used the summit to project China as an equal to the United States on the global stage, to demonstrate that the world's most important bilateral relationship runs through Beijing as much as through Washington, to direct the tone and tempo of that relationship on China's terms. Trump got a beautiful welcome, a state banquet, and an invitation to host Xi in September. He got praise and friendship, and the opportunity to tell his domestic audience that things with China are going great. What he did not get is what Canada is now building in Calgary. Specific dates, binding commitments, industrial infrastructure with a construction start that investors can plan around. A deal that produces 50,000 careers and 1 million barrels per day of market access that did not exist before the agreement was signed. Beijing produced vibes. Calgary produced a pipeline.
Alberta's commitment to submit a comprehensive proposal for a bitumen pipeline to Asian markets to the Federal Major Projects Office by Canada Day, by July 1st this year, and Canada's commitment to pursue the designation of that proposal as a project of national interest under the Building Canada Act by the 1st of October.
July the 1st, October the 1st, September 2027. Those are the dates that make the Calgary Agreement fundamentally different from everything that came out of Beijing this week. Because here is the strategic irony that Washington has not yet fully processed. Trump flew to Beijing specifically to strengthen America's position in the global competition for energy, technology, and economic influence. He brought the chief executives of America's largest companies. He talked about selling more American beef and American aircraft to China. He discussed how to reduce the tariff tensions that have disrupted bilateral trade for over a year. And while he was doing all of that, Canada was signing an agreement that will send 1 million barrels per day of low-carbon Alberta oil directly to the Asian markets Trump was trying to cultivate. Not through American infrastructure, not at prices determined by American corridor constraints, through Canadian infrastructure at global benchmark prices. Canada is not competing with Trump for China's attention. Canada is building the infrastructure that makes Chinese and broader Asian energy security less dependent on American goodwill to function. The Asian buyers that Trump was courting in Beijing this week are the same buyers that will be receiving Canadian oil through the Calgary pipeline starting in 2027. Trump went to Beijing to talk about access to Asian markets. Carney stayed in Calgary and built it.
Both China and the United States stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation. Our two countries should be partners rather than rivals.
Partners rather than rivals. Xi chose those words very carefully, and understanding why requires understanding what China actually got from the Beijing summit and how it connects to what Canada is building in Calgary. China's primary objective going into the summit was not a trade deal. It was stability. Xi needed to demonstrate to Chinese domestic audiences and to global markets that the relationship with Washington is manageable, that Chinese economic development is not fundamentally threatened by American tariff policy, that Beijing can sit across the table from the most powerful leader in the world and emerge with its position intact and its dignity enhanced. On all of those objectives, Xi succeeded. The summit produced no major concessions from China on trade, technology, or Taiwan. It produced warm words, a state banquet, and an invitation to Washington in September. From Beijing's perspective, that is a significant win. But here is what Xi's partners rather than rivals framing does not address. Canada is now entering the Asian energy market at exactly the moment when Asian governments are most acutely aware of the risks of overdependence on any single energy relationship. The disruption of global energy supply chains through the Iran conflict, the volatility created by American tariff policy, the recognition that energy security requires diverse and reliable sources. Canadian energy, moving through Canadian infrastructure, produced with the lowest carbon intensity credentials in the world, is precisely what Asian energy importers are looking for, not as a replacement for their relationship with China or with the United States, as the reliable, stable, rules-based alternative that makes their overall energy position more resilient. Xi talked about partnership. Carney built access to the markets where that partnership will be most valuable.
We are viewed as a reliable country in a world that's anything but. We're viewed as a country that when we sign something, we honor it. We're viewed as a country that is now on the move, a country with ambition, with confidence, moving forward, a country that intends to build big. We're viewed as a country that is both an energy superpower and believes in addressing climate change.
A country that when we sign something, we honor it. That line is Canada's answer to everything that came out of Beijing this week, and it is aimed directly at the Asian energy importers who watched both summits unfold simultaneously. Because the Beijing summit, for all its warmth and friendship, reminded the world of something important about how great power relationships actually function. When Xi warned Trump that mishandling Taiwan could cause clashes and even conflicts that put the entire relationship in great jeopardy, and that warning was notably absent from the American readout of the same meeting, it demonstrated that even the most carefully managed bilateral relationship between the world's two largest economies can contain fundamental disagreements that neither side is willing to fully acknowledge publicly. That gap between what was said and what was reported, that tension between what China wants on Taiwan and what America is prepared to commit to, that uncertainty about whether the September White House visit will produce anything more concrete than the Beijing summit did. All of it is visible to the Asian governments that depend on the stability of great power relations for their own economic security. Canada is offering something different, not the drama of a great power summit with unclear outcomes. The quiet reliability of a country that submits its pipeline proposal by July the 1st, receives its designation by October the 1st, and breaks ground in September 2027. a country that signed 20 economic agreements across 5 continents and honored every one of them. A country that, when it signs something, honors it. In a world defined by great power uncertainty, that reliability is a strategic asset that no summit in Beijing can replicate.
We will no longer rely on others to defend our Arctic security or to fuel our economy. We're taking full responsibility for defending our sovereignty, and we are unleashing a range of new economic opportunities for the over 140,000 Northerners who will benefit from stronger, more connected communities, more opportunities, and a higher standard of living.
No longer rely on others. That phrase connects the Calgary pipeline to the Arctic investment strategy, to the defense industrial plan, to the 20 trade agreements across 5 continents. It is the single thread running through everything Canada has announced in the past several months. Trump went to Beijing because American power still requires great power symmetry to demonstrate its relevance. Because American economic strategy still depends on managing a bilateral relationship with China that is simultaneously the world's most important and its most contested. Because Washington's leverage in global affairs still runs through the drama of high-stakes meetings between leaders who call each other friends while pursuing fundamentally incompatible interests. Canada is building something different, not leverage through drama, leverage through infrastructure, not influence through symmetry, influence through reliability, not power through the threat of confrontation, power through the demonstrated capacity to deliver what the world actually needs. 1 million barrels per day to Asian markets through Canadian infrastructure starting in September 2027. A defense industrial strategy that redirects $470 billion toward Canadian sovereign capability. An Arctic investment plan backed by $40 billion that connects communities and resources that have been isolated for generations. 20 trade agreements that give Canadian exporters access to markets that were closed a year ago. Trump was in Beijing this week making promises. Carney was in Calgary making a pipeline. The world noticed both. And it is drawing its own conclusions about which one will matter more in 10 years. Stay with this channel. Every time Canada makes a move that changes the story, we will explain exactly why it matters.